Black Friday. I'm glad you survived the Black Friday holiday Thanksgiving weekend. But it's time to get back for the next week. It's time to get started with the latest news. It's time for another edition of Beyond Reason Radio, where I am your host, Michael Yaffee, your voice of reason in a world that is, well, it is beyond reason. And you would think, and I just saw this on the Blaze just like a second ago. And there's actually talk out there, believe it or not, there's actually talk by Hillary Clinton for her to run again in 2012. There's actually talk of Hillary Clinton. This is pretty beyond reason. I don't know how she thinks she could have a chance after this, but she doesn't want to go away, obviously. She's saying the recount in Wisconsin, she's backing that now. They're pressured to the electors to vote Hillary because she won the popular vote. And now there's talk that even if none of that pans out, which none of it will pan out, that she's going to run again for president in 2020. So there you go. Hope you're all looking forward to that. So we'll talk a little bit of beyond reason politics coming up, but all the controversy out there is about Donald Trump, and is he going to pick Mitt Romney, and who he's picking for his cabinet, and yada, yada, yada. I don't really care about all that, really, at the moment. I guess I should care maybe a little bit more in the future, but there's other things that I want to talk about. And I just have to say this. Is it too much to ask? Is it too much to ask for all of us as a country to at least unite behind the idea that Fidel Castro was a murderous dictator thug, an evil person who was bad for Cuba and the world? Is this too much to ask? I mean, apparently it is, because there's some people out there. I mean, all you have to do is look at T-shirt sales and progressives, how they love Che Guevara, even though he murdered thousands of people in preparation for Castro. So that's wonderful. And for anyone who has any doubts about how evil Castro is, about how bad the Cuban dictatorship was, all you have to do is ask someone from Cuba. I've talked to people from Cuba. They're easy to find, especially because you live in Florida. And I haven't met one who said, Castro was great. What a guy. No. All you have to do is talk to someone from Cuba, and they will tell you how awful Castro was. But for some reason, it's too much to ask in today's world, believe it or not, for us to just agree that he was a bad guy. That it's probably good for the world that he's dead now. Probably good for Cuba that he's dead now. But there you go. I found an interesting piece from the American Spectator, by the way, that documented a lot of what Castro did. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Before I get to that, we've had some comments from leaders across the world, like the most notable one is Trudeau from Canada, who's a socialist. See, the socialists have such a hard time, bashing Cuba, because they want to believe that at least the communism part was okay. So we can't bash them too much because, then we have to look poorly at communism and socialism, and that's a little too hard for the left to do. I mean, when you have people like leftists like Michael Moore who make movies about how great the Cuban healthcare system is, then of course it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to bash Cuba and to bash Castro, as much as he should be bashed, because he was an evil person. I don't know why I'm having to say this. You should already know this, but apparently, like I said, this is hard to believe. In fact, one person to listen to, I know a lot of people don't like Marco Rubio on anything, but I think he has some credibility when it comes to this issue. He talked about this today, made some comments about this, and I think he's right on, honestly. his family was from there. Like I said, all you have to do is talk to someone from Cuba to know that Castro was bad. I mean, is this too much to ask that we can just agree that Cuba was bad? This is what Rubio had to say today.
If we're going to eulogize him and analyze all Castro, let's have an honest assessment of what he has meant and what he has done. And I don't want to hear this garbage about, oh, people can read more than they did back in 1959. You know, over 2 million people had to leave their country. There were people executed without trial. There were people in prison for 25 or 30 years. I mean, he did some horrifying things here and around the world, and he needs to be held to account for that. And right now, he's facing his maker, and he'll have to account for a lot of that.
Amen to that. He is facing his maker. And I'm just going to assume, especially since he's a communist, not religious, I'm just going to assume that as he's facing his maker, that it's not going very well. Is that too much to assume out there? I mean, the biggest comment today that has sparked a lot of controversy out there is Justin Trudeau, who's the Canadian Prime Minister, said some comments that was kind of interpreted as positive of Castro, pretty much because it was. He said he was a remarkable leader and expressed his sorrow at the Friday death of Cuba's longest-serving president. I don't think remarkable leader, and if you show any sorrow for the murderous thug Castro, I really don't feel sorry for you. I really can't understand how that's even possible. I mean, it's beyond reason, like the name of the show. So, and then there was another person out there who you all know was very positive on Castro, of the Cuban education system, and that is, of course, Colin Kaepernick, who I'm sure all of you out there just love. Right now, Colin Kaepernick came out and said, at least one positive thing he did was he raised the literacy rate, and the education system is so great in Cuba. In fact, people love it so much that people are leaving the United States to flee to Cuba to get to their education. Oh, wait. That's actually not happening. So, but I found some interesting comments from a judge who is a Cuban exile, his family from Cuba, Cuban exile, named Alex Ferrer. And he had the best comments in response to Colin Kaepernick and his praise for Castro. And basically, it's just lays it down. There's nothing Kaepernick can say in response to what this judge had to say in response to Colin Kaepernick's comments. This is what he said.
Where do we begin? Yeah, it's very easy to have a lot of money to spend on education. And by the way, the Cuban government is the source of figures regarding education and their wonderful healthcare system. So I'm not sure I would weigh what they tell us the same way that I would some other more reliable sources. That being said, it's very easy to have money to spend on education and have money to spend on healthcare when you're taking all the money your citizens can have, first of all, when you're spending no money whatsoever on due process or criminal justice system that provides civil rights. Colin Kaepernick should think long and hard about the message he's sending. We already know.
So he makes an interesting point already. Oh, yeah, sure, they spend some money in education because they don't spend any money on, the civil justice system and the people. So, yeah, they spend some money in education and healthcare, which both are really terrible, let's be honest. But that's because they don't have any money for the people. And basically, they don't spend it on the civil justice system, which Colin Kaepernick says here is corrupt. If he thinks the civil justice system here is corrupt, I suggest he try it out in Cuba. Now, this judge, whose family was exiled from Cuba, Cuban exile, continues on about Kaepernick's comment.
Who Fidel Castro was. The Cubans do, but you don't have to be Cuban to know he's a murdering thug, just like I don't have to be black to know that the KKK is a massively racist organization. Sure. But what this tells us is who Colin Kaepernick is. You can't, on the one hand, kneel in protest and say you're for freedom for everybody and say that you are against systemic oppression and wear on your shirt the picture of the biggest oppressor in the world, a guy who executed people by firing squad without a trial, a guy who is responsible for the deaths of women and children by having his Coast Guard ram their boats as they try to flee the island, this island that apparently is such a paradise that Colin Kaepernick wants to tout it. People aren't going there. People are running away from there. They don't want to live there.
So think about that for a second. I mean, first you're like, oh, Colin Kaepernick, a hypocrite? No. Of course he's a hypocrite. These socialists, they don't... What's so frustrating about people like Colin Kaepernick is they don't understand how great they have it here. I mean, this is a guy who has benefited more than most from this country, from the tolerance of this country, from the wealth and prosperity of this country, from the people of this country. He has a very good life, and yet he talks about how great Cuba is. And he complains about the civil justice system here. And it's like, do you realize how great you have it? They don't. They don't. It's all about their leftist ideology that is not based, I mean, it's not based in facts, not based in reason. And a lot of it is probably to just get attention. And because if you whine about something long enough, you can get attention. Now, this judge, this Cuban exile judge, continues on.
So he's sending a clear message that what he's doing with these protests is hypocrisy. It's not really about people's rights.
Speaking of hypocrisy and people's rights, Colin Kaepernick has noted our prison system, that it's overrun and too large, and there are critiques to be had about that. But what would happen if Colin Kaepernick took a knee in Cuba during the Cuban national anthem?
He would be beat to a senseless pulp. He would be arrested, probably shot, but at the very least, the rights he has here to protest, and I afford him that right. Of course, everybody can protest. I may not agree with him. I don't have to agree with his protest. I think he's wrong, but you know what? I don't see the world from his perspective, so maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Over there, if he knelt during the national anthem, he would be arrested, dragged to jail, and beat into a senseless pile. That's what would happen.
So think about that for a second. Think about that. Colin Kaepernick has the right to protest here. No one's arguing that he doesn't have the right to do it. He protests here because our evil, civil justice system, racist, whatever. Praises Cuba, wears a Castro t-shirt, and all this stuff. Loves socialism. And yet, if he was in Cuba and he did that during the Cuban national anthem, he would either be beaten, arrested, or killed. Do these leftists not understand? And it's deeper than that. They don't want to understand, because then they would have to admit to themselves and to their leftist friends that socialism doesn't work. And if they point out how bad the dictator of Cuba was, Castro, then they have to also look at all the bad things that come from socialism in general. And that's incredibly difficult for them to do because they want socialism. And I'm going to get to more of that in a second, but I just want to point out some things about, this is our beloved leader, the beloved leader of Cuba, Castro. In fact, it is estimated that with the help of Che Guevara, which, a lot of progressive young people love now, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can wear a t-shirt of a murderous thug and think it's cool. An estimated 30,000 people were arrested. This is just in the 1960s. Estimated 30,000 people were arrested in Cuba for political reasons, and 7,000 to 10,000 were believed to have been executed, and that was just the start. From the late 1950s to the 1990s, it is estimated that Castro killed between 15,000 and 18,000 people, whether victims of long-term imprisonment or outright execution by bullets. Remember, this is a small island. That's a lot of people. Cuba is a surreal island of no boats. Why are there no boats? Because boats are banned. Because if they have boats, they try to flee. So in order to prevent people from fleeing that so-called socialist paradise, they had to ban boats. Think about that. They had to ban boats. I didn't even know that. Despite that, some people have attempted to swim in the waters or make their own boats and rafts and all this other stuff to get to Florida from Cuba. An estimated 100,000 people have risked the journey. Of those, perhaps as many as 30,000 to 40,000 died from drowning. As they bob for breath, the Castro government sends military helicopters to drop large bags of sand on them from high above. Oh, this is that great civil rights leader, Fidel Castro. Oh, at least, I mean, he probably didn't discriminate on who he was killing, so that maybe Kaepernick will like that. But the fact is, he wanted to kill millions of people. He urged the Soviet Union to use nuclear weapons on the United States to kill millions of Americans. I think if he got his way, Colin Kaepernick would not be around to protest with his millions of dollars and his Super Bowl. Unbelievable. And it's not just Colin Kaepernick. He's just sort of a personification of it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of others out there that are like him. But I want to go back a little bit to this idea of why it's hard sometimes for socialists, for Democrats and the left, to be too critical of someone like Castro. And it goes back to the idea of the fact that they don't want to admit that socialism could bring about something so evil. Because they want socialism here. And if you think that sounds radical, well, I found this story from Mediaite. Bernie Sanders and Spike Lee have been discussing the future of the Democrat Party. Now, who is Bernie Sanders? You all know who Bernie Sanders is. He says he's a socialist. I don't call him that. He calls himself that. Sanders said in an interview that I think we need a house cleaning. I think the DNC needs an entirely new direction. I think it needs leadership, and I think it needs to be very clear about the fact that it stands with working families and is prepared to take on the billionaire class and Wall Street and corporate America and the drug companies and the insurance companies. People are hurting, so pretty much business. Do you honestly think this new Democrat Party, after Hillary Clinton, is going to all of a sudden embrace free market capitalism? All of a sudden embrace individual liberty? Maybe for marijuana. That's about it. They'll love to embrace individual liberty for that, but they're not going to embrace individual liberty for anything else. They want socialism here. That's where they're going to go. I told you in either the next election, depending on if Trump runs again, but we are coming to a future election where it's going to be a hardcore socialist versus a hardcore libertarian. And we're going to have to choose the direction of this country. It's already coming to fruition because the Democrat Party, they want Keith Ellison to lead the DNC. They're looking to Bernie Sanders to talk about the future. And you have leftists in the media, like the Young Turks, talking about they need to be, the era of politeness is over. Remember, I talked about that, and they need to be more radical. So when you want socialism as your future, when you have someone like Michael Moore making movies about how great Cuban healthcare system is, it's hard to be too critical of Castro. You know you got to a little bit because, you know, he killed thousands of people. But they don't want to go too far because they want what he had. He said the hope is to understand that the Democrat Party, this is Bernie Sanders continuing on in an interview, has stumbled very significantly in the last number of decades. The Democrats have lost over 900 state legislature seats in the last 8 years. You'd think you would realize that's because of Obama leaning more to the left. What that tells me is the Democratic Party has got to very fundamentally rethink who it is and where it goes. It has to shed current situation where it's a party of the liberal elite. The Democrat Party has got to say we are on the side of the 99%. What is all this talk about? It's about going after Wall Street, the banks, companies. He never talks about going after government. It's very convenient, don't you think? Never talks about going after unions. Corrupt unions. No. Those he will love. Our party is not about having fancy fundraisers. Oh, look at this. I didn't even read this until now. It's about going into union halls, veterans halls, farm communities, the inner cities. It has to bring people together around the progressive agenda and make the government work for all of us. Well, this is what I would have to tell Bernie Sanders, who wants the government to work for all of us. Who do you think Castro said he was working for when he took over private business, the military, got rid of civil justice, enslaved that country? Who did he say he was working for? Oh, it was the government working for the people, for all of them. Yes, everyone was fair and equal because they were all equally poor. Why we can't understand that this doesn't work. That if we continue to look towards the government to save our hope, it leads us down a very bad direction. And we have places like Cuba as a shining example. Not really a shining, I guess shining like crap is shining afterwards. Example of the destruction of socialism. And yet you have people that want to go more towards that socialist way. So when they want to do that, it's very hard for them to bash Cuba. Now, unfortunately, when I get back from the break, I have to talk about how the Republican Party is kind of going in the wrong direction as well. We have an opportunity. This was the opportunity for the Republican Party to finally really stand for free market capitalism and individual liberty and really limiting the size of government, which we need to do. And unfortunately, it looks like the Republican Party is not learning the lesson either. And I'm going to talk about that. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee. We're on the Beyond Reason Radio app live, or you can catch the podcast later, or you can catch us on Facebook Live. I got some comments on Facebook Live. I'll get to comment on Facebook Live. Do this show every Monday and Friday right here, beyondreasonradio.com. I'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple app stores.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of truth in a world that is post-truth too much of the time. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio, and I was talking a little bit about Castro. I was talking about the fact that it's hard for leftists to really not criticize him too much. To criticize him too much, I mean, because they want the socialism. They just think they could do a better job of it, and how that's troubling. I just got a comment from Jason on Facebook Live. You can comment on Facebook Live. It says Americans will eventually wake up to the idea that they simply can't live with Muslims, invaders, or socialists. Separation cometh. I'm not sure I'm with you on the whole Muslim thing, but separation cometh. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I am not for like civil war or something. I'm just for promoting ideas that work and hopefully winning elections off of them and getting more people there. Now, I talked a little bit about the problem with Democrats and wanting to go more socialist, but this is what really troubles me. And I've talked about this a little bit before. On Friday's show, I gave you comments from Stephen Moore, who's a conservative economist, but said to Republicans in a meeting, the Republican Party is now the party of populism, of populists, not conservatives, Republican. This troubles me because I'm noticing more and more conservative sites, conservative editorialists, conservative commentators kind of getting away from their conservatism for populism. Why does that bother me? Because populism is just another form of progressivism. It's just another form of wanting the the government to do something for you. And until we understand that we have to change the role and idea of government and get it back to its constitutional role, we're not going to solve the problems. Unfortunately, the Republican Party isn't getting this. And many so-called conservatives are not getting this. I found this from the Washington Times today. And this concerns me. Trump's infrastructure program, this is from the Washington Times. It could deliver a powerful punch and be affordable too. This is from Peter Morisi. He's basically calling here for the $1 trillion stimulus infrastructure program, not from Obama, but now from Donald Trump. He says additional spending on infrastructure could deliver a powerful jolt to economic growth if the president-elect Trump eschews conventional government approaches and gets the money out quickly and effectively. Who is Trump? He's the president-elect. The president-elect is the head of the executive branch of the government. This is a conservative wanting the government to provide economic growth. A powerful jolt. Not by getting out of the way, but by spending more money. He admits that such skeptics like myself do not like this idea because Obama's stimulus efforts failed so badly in creating jobs. But he argues in this article that the reason that failed is because government didn't spend the money where it should be. They spent it through other things and not where it should have gone. But, he says, Trump won't do that. Trump will spend it right. Don't they understand that the government never spends it right? Yes, the government has roles. Yes, it has to build bridges. But this whole article is not about the government restoring our infrastructure. It's about the government boosting the economy by spending more of our money, which never works because it assumes that dollar that the government's spending is better. It's assuming that the government knows how to spend that dollar more than free people in a free market. He says the Trump administration transition website promises $550 billion for highways, bridges, tunnels, rails, airports, and the like. That could easily boost GDP by $1 trillion. See? This is the so-called conservative who wants the government to spend money to boost GDP. He says Trump will do a better job of not getting through the bureaucracies and cutting through all that stuff. No, this is the problem. Even if Trump does a better job, it sets a precedent for future corruption. Anytime the government is called to spend this money to quote-unquote boost the economy, they're never, ever, 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 ever going to do it as efficiently as free people in a free market. It won't work. And we'll be even more in debt. And I have a story about the debt that I'll get to in the next segment. Which is... Notice I'm always talking about that anymore. It's very interesting. He said some of this money could be found by simply offering U.S. corporations a special 17.5% corporate tax rate to appreciate much of the $2.4 trillion profits parked overseas. I'm fine for cutting taxes. If you want to cut taxes, get rid of regulations, make more states' right to work, all that stuff, that's fine. Because that gets the government out of the way so free people in a free market can spend it more wisely. But he wants the government to spend more money. This is a conservative article in the Washington Times, and this isn't the only one out there that I've seen. In fact, I saw one in the National Review of all places that basically said the same thing. And I was shocked by this. Because now the Republican Party, we're the populist party, we're for the people, we're going to do government right. No, you're not. Because it's not the role of government to do these things. And the reason why is it's a systemic issue. They never do it right. because systemically government's not supposed to do those things. I know this is hard for us to do. I know this is hard for us to comprehend, because it's so easy for a politician to stand in front of a big bridge and say, look at what I've created. And everyone says, yay! Or they create some big sports stadium and they'll say, look what I created. And everyone's like, yay, look at the big sports stadium. Like the Romans in the Colosseums. Yay, games! Rome's burning, but we're like, yay, games! We look at we look at our new stadiums and we think it's going to boost the economy, when usually the economies right around the stadiums end up doing worse because of them, and the city ends up in more debt, and it never does what it's promised to do. And yet we keep going down this road. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the problem of the national debt. We have a lot more to get to, and I have something fun I'm going to end the show with today. This is Beyond Reason Radio, as well as we're on the Beyond Reason Radio app. We're on Facebook Live as well, and we will be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. Get Yaffee's take on the Beyond Reason issues every day. Follow him on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. That's Beyond Reason and the letter R.
Here's an example of what I was talking about in the last segment. National Review, title, article, "The GOP's future is as the party of industry." Now, what they mean by industry is manufacturing. Let's forget the fact that manufacturing output has actually expanded a lot in the past couple of decades. You wouldn't believe it. Just not in areas you might think, but high-end manufacturing does well. But no, we have to be the party of industry. And where does this lead? It leads to the Republicans now thinking that the government needs to be more involved in the economy to promote manufacturing. That's where all this is headed. The populist party now. It's not good. Why can't we be the party of free market capitalism? That would have been a good direction to go. But they're going to take us down this big government spending populism, so the government will spend just in other areas, and it's not going to work. So that'll be good. That'll just help out the Democrats in the future. And all while everybody ignores the giant, and when I say giant, I mean the giant, biggest you've ever seen, elephant in the room, which would be the national debt. Another article from the National Review from James Langford, which this is a little bit better, says the election excitement may be over, but the federal debt crisis isn't. Says the clock is ticking. Notice how nobody's really talking about that anymore. We're talking about infrastructure spending. Yeah, boost the economy. Not talking about cutting spending. Getting rid of the debt, because it's not going to happen under Trump, which I warned you about. Maybe he'll change. Maybe he'll convince me otherwise. Hopefully he does. Hopefully I'm wrong. It says, one thing that did not change, this is from James Langford, National Review. One thing that did not change on Tuesday, November 8th, are unsustainable and exploding national debt of nearly $20 trillion. While America was focused on an unconventional presidential election season, the federal debt increased $587 billion in 2016 alone. Who's going to pay for that? You and I are, especially if you're like around my age. You and I are going to have to pay for that. So hope you're looking forward to that. Last year, our federal government spent $223 billion, or 6% of all discretionary spending, on debt interest payments. That's going to grow, especially when interest rates go up. On our current track, we will spend more on debt interest than we do on our national defense within 10 years. Hey, what's your plan, Trump, to get rid of the debt? I'm going to spend on infrastructure. That's not a plan to get rid of the national debt. The results of this election made it resoundingly clear that the American people no longer accept business as usual in Washington. There is a clear responsibility to rejuvenate the morbid economy with expansive reforms to our overpriced healthcare system, tax code, yada, yada, yada. The federal debt wasn't a major focus during the presidential campaign, but must be addressed if we are to continue lasting economic health for the American economy. It's not going to be addressed. Not if they're wanting to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. Not if they're going to want to expend another entitlement for maternity leave, which will just grow and grow and grow over time. Not if they're still wanting to keep tons of people on Medicaid. Under current policies, our annual deficits are projected to rise above $1 trillion by the end of this decade. The baby boomer generation is turning 65 at the pace of 10,000 individuals per day, which means that the retirement age group will double in size between 2010 and 2040. Congress should have spent the last 25 years preparing for this predictable retirement tidal wave. No. They spent the last 25 years spending more of our money. Congratulations. We need tax reform because our convoluted code, yada, yada, yada. There is a way to reduce duplicative and wasteful spending of our tax dollars while reining in the federal government back into its clear constitutional role. It says, on Monday, I will release my second annual government waste report. Yada, yada, yada. We've all heard this from him before. It says, Washington can't address our debt through budget cuts alone. We need strong economic growth that leads to higher incomes. Of course we do. But what... This is why it worries me when the Republican Party is now the so-called populist party of the future. It worries me because what really needs to happen, which has been pretty much the theme of this show, and I'm going to keep making it the theme of the show until people understand it, is that the role of government needs to change back to its constitutional role. Merely cutting spending in certain departments isn't going to fix the problem in the long term. Merely spending more in infrastructure, hoping that the economy will grow, will not fix the problem in the long term. Merely putting in Donald Trump, who says he's going to cut waste, is not going to fix the problem in the long term. Not when you have a number like 20 trillion that keeps growing and more people retiring every year. No, it's going to take a systemic fix in the role of government to stop it from doing these things. And this is why it's makes me sad when I hear the Republican Party talk about being the party now of populism. And you've heard it here over and over again. The party of populism. Populism is just another form of progressivism. It's another form of government growth. By the way, if you're just tuning in, the Beyond Reason breaking news of the hour, I found it just before I got on the air, is Hillary Clinton is thinking about running in 2020. So please do. There's no way you could win now. I don't even think she would win the primary at this point. But please do. Please go for it. If we have another Trump-Clinton election, I don't know what I would do with myself. I don't know if I could continue on. Just saying. Now, before I take a break, I'm going to end the show, by the way, with something really funny. I found this story which was really interesting. Speaking of government spending, one thing the government thinks we need to spend more on, if you talk to Bernie Sanders and Barack Obama, is green energy. Oh, Bernie Sanders hates private companies unless it's green energy. Then he wants the government to give them all kinds of money. Interesting how that works. But I found this story. It's from the Global Warming Policy Forum, and I just find this interesting because the global warming stuff is just, how long are we going to have to put up with this? Seriously, almost my whole life I've been hearing about this. I'm 30. I've been hearing about the threats of global warming my whole life. And it's never the catastrophe they say it is. But this is from the Global Warming Policy Forum. Global average temperatures over land have plummeted by more than 1 degree Celsius since the middle of this year. Their biggest and steepest fall on record, according to, of course, satellite data. It's funny how all the global warming activists, they love the land-based temperature models, but they love to ignore that satellite data. They don't like the satellite, even though that's probably the most accurate when you think about it. The news comes amid mounting evidence that the recent run of world record high temperatures is about to end. Of course it's about to end. The fall revealed by NASA satellite measurements. Once again, it's the satellite images, which is probably the most accurate. Of the lower atmosphere has been caused by the end of El Nino. This has been predicted for a while, by the way. Most of the so-called extreme changes in weather, most of the warming, cooling trends, most all of it, the hurricanes, the trends of hurricanes higher or lower, most of it can be traced back to the El Nino phenomenon and the La Nina phenomenon. It almost always goes in cycles around the El Nino, La Nina cycles. Almost every time. And that has nothing to do with global warming or cooling or climate change or whatever you want to call it now. And it's just, he says, big El Ninos have always had an immense impact on world weather, triggering higher than normal temperatures over huge swaths of the world. The 2015-16 El Nino was probably the strongest since accurate measurements began, with the water up to 3 Celsius warmer than usual. It has now been replaced by a La Nina event, which happens. It's cyclical. When the water in the sun in the same Pacific region turns colder than normal. So now we're going to get cold temperatures than normal, but we'll hear that's about climate change as well, and we'll have to spend even more money on the government to fix the climate, even though it doesn't do anything, and we could just have more energy exploration, which would really boost the economy through the private sector. If we just got out of the way, let them explore more, let them sell more energy supplies, which will lower prices, which would expand the so-called manufacturing industry that the Republicans want now, and which would expand GDP beyond measure, which will get us our reliance off of foreign oil, make oil prices more competitive, make us more prosperous on the world stage, and we'll have more standing on the world stage, and maybe decrease the debt as well. Very easy, and the one thing that gets in the way is, once again, this stupid global warming activism, which tells me what it's all about. It's about politics and world politics, not about science. What do you guys think? Got some comments on Facebook Live. People are watching on Facebook Live. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason, and I will be right back. I have a little fun thing I'm going to end the show with. I will be right back.
You know what's beyond reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio. If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio.
Yes, I am the voice of reason in a world beyond reason. I am Michael Yaffee from Good Morning Orlando. I'm sure you've all heard me on WFLA as I co-host and produce that morning show. I also do this show, Beyond Reason Radio, exclusively at BeyondReasonRadio.com and Facebook Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Also do it Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So I found a fun little bit that I figured I would end the show with. Because I know you all were wondering, what does George W. Bush, George W. Bush, what does he think about Trump winning the election? A little audio here from George W. Bush and what he thinks about Trump winning the election. I know you all have been wondering. And he puts it so well, and I thought I would just share it with you today.
My fellow Americans, people have been asking me how I feel about the election. How do you paint a man like Donald Trump? There is a man, his name is Trump. He kicked my baby brother's rump. The man we love to hate before we knew ya. but you hung in tough. You took the cake, your strategery to make us great. Misunderestimation never threw ya. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Well, Hillary wanted you to run. You'd never win, but oh, what fun. When you were chosen, she sang hallelujah. Your yellow hair, your goofy tan, your too long ties, your too small hands. Still America decided they would choose ya. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. So raise the flag and ring the bell. Donald won, ain't that swell? We're all still Americans, that is true, yeah. So wait it out, give peace a chance. Perhaps we'll all learn how to dance, and with one united voice sing hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
That's what George W. Bush thinks of Trump winning the election. Okay. It's actually my buddy John Morgan, who is known. He's from Orlando. Not, John Morgan, but good friend of mine, John Morgan, in Orlando, does the amazing impersonation. Video's even better of that, by the way, of George W. Bush. And he's actually got a new book coming out this week. Let me see if I can pull it up here. The War on Fear by John Morgan. What would you do if you were not afraid? Got a new book coming out this week. Strong Christian guy and a friend of mine. I'm probably going to get him on the morning show later this week. I just saw that. I thought I should lighten the mood a little bit here at the end of Beyond Reason. Now, I usually end the show with a verse, and I was thinking before I get to the end of the verse, during Christmas, I figure I'd end with verses that talk about the Christmas message and the importance of the Christmas holiday. And today I'm going to read a little bit from, just to end the show. If you missed any of the show, by the way, catch the podcast of the show. The video will be up on Facebook. It will be up on BeyondReasonRadio.com. I talked about a lot of good stuff. You can comment, share with your friends, all that stuff, great stuff. And we'll get to, and I'll be back on Friday as well. But this is from Luke chapter 1, and this is after Mary visited Elizabeth and, found out she was pregnant with Jesus, the Son of God, and she had a song. And I figured this was a good few verses here to celebrate the start of the Christmas season. It's really good. Mary said, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. For he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, even as he said to our fathers." Thank you all for joining me today. This has been another edition of Beyond Reason Radio. Make sure to catch the podcast of the show if you missed it. Available anywhere podcasts are available. And, well, I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks a lot.